All right, in this session, Mark is going to be talking to us about giving good feedback to your group members, as well as what's called self-disclosure, when that might be important or appropriate for a group leader. So, quick question for you all before he dives in. How would you define feedback in a small group setting, and why do you think it might be important? So when you think of that word feedback, how do you think that's going to come into play in a small group setting? All right, and we're going to just pretend like that question did not happen.
They're putting us to the test
Yes,
on what do you do when
okay.
no one answers the question.
Which is okay. Yes, John, you got something?
Well, we can go.
Okay.
I think feedback is trying to realize whether your goals were accomplished as far as the training. You know, you started the meeting with a goal in mind, and then to know that you accomplished that goal, you need some feedback to know.
So
that
this
you
is
got it.
you asking for feedback from a
Right.
group member. Okay,
And
good.
then- And then also, you know, for improvement for, you know, where to go, direction from where you ended up.
Okay, that's good. And that is an important thing. The group leaders also, they do need feedback occasionally. If you're just going, you know, some groups they meet for 2 years, 4 years or whatever, and you don't really even know if it's going well besides just sort of, you know, getting a sense of things. Okay, so that's good. So that's when a group leader might ask for feedback. And then Mark is going to talk to us about when we might provide feedback to our group members.
So from the first, when we're teaching people about doing reflective listening, so as you reflect back the feeling, the content. As soon as we do that, people are going, but is there time we get to tell people? Was there a time we get to tell people something? I want to tell them something. When do I get my chance to tell them something? It's like, yeah, it's coming. After a lot of listening. So it's in us. We want to have input. We want to be able to influence in a positive way. And so there is a time and there are skills to do that. And so that's what we're going to talk about a little bit now. Specifically, I think in our small group context, I think of 3 different kinds of feedback that tends to be very useful. Validating, genuine compliments, and constructive critique. So we'll talk about each of those for a little bit. So validating. You can't always validate a person's thoughts if they're thinking irrationally. They're holding to like bad theology. You can't validate that. You can't always validate their choices, their behaviors, the things they say, especially if those things are hurtful to themselves or other people. But something you can just about always validate in a person is the feeling reaction they're having to the things they believe and their interpretations of them and their behaviors and such. At that point, we can often connect and validate. And I have a little formula that I use. I have a little script I use. And when I'm going to validate, I'll say, so I can see how you would feel blank, and that's a feeling word, mad, sad, glad, scared, or confused, or variations of. I can see how you would feel blank, feeling when blank this happened, and you thought blank, fill in the blank. So I can see how you would feel hurt when no one called you and you thought that meant people didn't remember you or care about you. I can see how that would hurt. Now, I'm not addressing whether it's accurate or not. I mean, maybe they got a call and it went to voicemail and the voicemail was full and couldn't take a message, and maybe they didn't get a call, but people still think of them and value them. They just didn't get a call. So we're not arguing with are those things true or not. We're just saying I could understand how thinking those things you would feel that way. And I can imagine I might feel similarly if that happened to me and I thought that about what happened to me. Even if I at that time were also thinking inaccurately that thought, it would still produce that feeling. And so I can imagine that. And so at least I'm joining at a human to human level. And the advantage of that is I have an alliance now, and there's power in that alliance. Sometimes when you have teacher-student or group facilitator, group member, what you're hoping for is growth and improvement and advancement, but sometimes people are a little ambivalent about that growth. Like they're not sure they want to do that change because it's going to be costly or whatever. But as someone who cares about their spiritual well-being, you want to urge them forward. They can feel like it's a competitor, like you against them. You're attacking my comfort zone, and it feels like you're attacking me. And so it can feel like they're at odds. But when I validate and I come around and I say, I can understand how you would feel that, it gives the experience, it's communicating that I'm on your team. I'm not a competitor, I'm a teammate, and I'm willing to see the world through your lens. I'm willing to try to enter your world and understand it. And so validating helps you all be on the same team in working towards the goal. And then later you may be able to influence towards those growth things that you're hoping for your folks. So that's validating. Genuine compliments. Purpose of a genuine compliment is not to make things all better. It's not to make a sad person less sad. A genuine compliment, the purpose of a genuine compliment is to give encouragement and emotional energy to someone who's maybe in the middle of some rigorous growth adventure that they're on, right? It's wearing them out, and so we need energy, we need encouragement. So a genuine compliment is meant to do that. And so I have 4 steps for a genuine compliment. You'll notice I always have like 3 or 4 steps, and if you're thinking, he's given us so many, how am I supposed to remember all these steps? Some of you are note takers, and taking notes helps you. If you're not a note taker, just keep in mind that all the things we talk about come out of the book, Unleashing the Power of Small Groups. And so you can get the book, you can read a chapter if you say, oh, there's a skill I want to brush up on. If you read it once and then highlight, then all you have to do is go back and read your highlighting when you want to get the basics down. So you get all your lists that I give you are in the book. But here's what I think makes for a powerful, genuine compliment. First is timing. You can attempt one too early. So someone is sharing, and they're sharing that they're feeling distant from God, and they don't feel like they're very successful, and they're not able to figure out life's challenges, and they just feel like a complete loser. And so if you start too early with the genuine compliment, no, you're a smart person. You are capable. You've accomplished many things. I'm confident you're going to figure this out too. Too early, and the impact is you're diminishing what they've shared. In fact, you're arguing with them. And they're saying, you're not hearing me. I said I'm a loser because I don't know what to do. And so the compliment doesn't have the effect of a compliment. What it needs first is, guess which skill? My favorite skill, a little bit of listening.
Yes.
If we listen first. So you just feel like a big loser because you can't feel God and you can't figure out the answers, and you can imagine getting through this lesson. That's right. Then they know I'm with them. And usually after some time then, it will seem right to give a genuine compliment. And oftentimes, the time I do it is when they're done kind of talking about it back and forth, and you can kind of feel there's emotional energy at the beginning, and the more they get a chance to talk about it, they finally get to the point where they go, and that tells me they're done. They talk themselves through on this part for this day. And so when that's done is a time when I think about giving a genuine compliment. Another thing that makes it helpful is genuine, hence the name, a genuine compliment. But flattery, people sniff out flattery, and it doesn't do anything. Like, you dress really nice, and I like your hair today, Bruce. And John, you smell good today. These kind of things, people go, whatever. It's meaningless for them. So it has to be something that you really believe in. And this is a good thing about that person. So timing's important. It has to be genuine. And then these last two, I think they kind of go together. It's character related and behaviorally specific. If the compliment is character related, behaviorally specific. So example that would be, I appreciate the courage you show in being so vulnerable with our group tonight. I appreciate the strength that you demonstrated standing up for yourself in the face of those bullies. I admire your generosity when you gave that person as much time as you did to listen to them. Boy, I really respect the graciousness you showed when you forgave that person who didn't even ask for forgiveness. The deal is, many of us struggle to receive a compliment. One of my best buddies busted my chops one day. He gave me a compliment, and I'm like, whatever, brushing it off. He goes, "You are really bad at taking a compliment. Maybe you could just say thank you." I'm like, oh, okay. So the next time he gives me a compliment, I go, "Thank you, Mike." It's just kind of hard for some of us. And we'll dismiss it, going, "Oh, that's just Jennifer being nice. She's a very nice person." But when it's behaviorally specific, it's hard to dismiss because I'm confronted with, well, yes, I did do that. And if a character trait is linked to that, so, well, yeah, I guess that is an expression of graciousness or courage or strength. Kind of hard to argue with that. And I can say, well, but I'm not that way very often, and that's not my true nature. And so even at the end, I might not fully embrace it. I'm not sure I believe that's true, but my group facilitator thinks that's true about me. And oftentimes, if you reflect that, other people in the group are going, yeah, my group thinks that about me. And so it plants a seed in the best possible way where it might bear fruit and germinate and give them strength and energy. Now, you can even give a whole group a compliment. At the end of a group time, you could say, "I'm just so impressed with how you all listened to one another tonight. You honored each other with your listening. I just thought it was beautiful to watch the way you guys cared for each other tonight." Character specific, related to what we're doing, and it helps a group, a sense of identity. We did this thing together and we did it well, and it got noticed. So that can work even for the whole group. Now, constructive critique. This one is a little harder. The first two are nice. This one can kind of feel like, oh, I don't like I'm picking on someone. Mm-hmm. But sometimes people need feedback about a behavior that's not working. Now, if you were to imagine what might be an almost universal human reaction to hearing a constructive critique or anything corrective, how might a person feel? Defensive. Embarrassed. Shrinking back. Ashamed. Guilty. All right. Yeah. These are all natural reactions to, oh no, someone's going to tell me that I haven't been perfect. I wasn't killing it. Oh, I messed up. And so, in giving someone a constructive critique from your group, it might work better to give it to them outside of the group. I mean, the intention is not to put them on the spot. We're not trying to embarrass them. We're not trying to punish them in front of people. We're trying to give them information that maybe they're not paying attention to, they're not aware of, in a way that will help them, encourage them maybe to look at things differently, maybe make a growth step, make a change. So you know me, I got my five-step template to giving a constructive critique. And so the first thing is I share my observations. Here's what I observed, and be behaviorally specific. Now that can include words they said. We're saying, here's what I observed. I saw you do this. I saw you say this. So I saw you the step two, and here's what I thought about that. So I'm owning my interpretations, my perceptions. Here's what I thought about that. And then I share, and here's how I felt about that. I don't say, here's how you made me feel. That's another class. No one makes me, but I felt this based on what I thought. And so what do you think about that? And then after that, here's what I would ask of you. So here's what I observed. Here's what I think about that. Here's what I felt about that. What do you think about that? Here's what I'm going to ask for you. So Jennifer's sharing in group, and she's mentioning something that's very personal. It's in a bit of a tender place, and there's a tear in her eye. And someone in the group, with just after a slight pause, cracks a joke. And so I think, oh, that's not exactly great. That's not going to create the environment that we want for people to be able to share. So outside of a group time, I might say, hey, can I chat with you? I want to run something past you, something that maybe you are not aware of. But tonight in group, I observed that when Jennifer was sharing and was a little bit emotional, that you lightened the mood with humor. And what I thought about that was maybe you felt uncomfortable around pain and sadness. And what I felt about that was I felt conflicted because I like to laugh and I don't want you to feel uncomfortable, but I also want Jennifer to feel like she has a safe place to be authentic, even if it's not happy, fun. And so what do you think about that? And a person could react a couple different ways. They could say, yeah, you're right, I'm not good in presence of sorrow and stuff, and I've always been the class clown, and yeah, that's sort of my defense mechanism, I suppose. Or someone could say, well, I don't know what you're talking about, you're blowing the whole thing out of proportion. I mean, the whole group laughed, they thought it was funny. So whatever they say, you give them a chance to kind of engage with the feedback, and you can still say, but so here's what I would ask going forward. So in the future, and what I try to do is give it to them as the best possible, what the advantage they would have in doing this behavior I'm going to request. So in the future, if you notice someone sharing, and you have about a painful thing, a sad thing, and you have an impulse to tell a joke, I want to ask you to take a minute, take a deep breath, and remind yourself you're giving this person a very generous gift if you will be present with them in this moment. Would you be willing to do that? So I asked for that behavior change. And most times people go, fine, whatever, or, yeah, I'd gladly do that. Now, and this is probably more advanced stuff. If you had someone who just absolutely wasn't going to change, and the behavior they were doing really was detrimental to the group, that's a time you'd call in your pastor, you'd call in your coach, and you'd work out a thing. But I'd say 90% of the time, this 5-step model will get you where you need to be. So share your observations, what you saw, what you thought, how you felt about it. What do you think about it? Here's what I'm going to ask from you. And some people, I guess, again, because we're prone towards embarrassment and shame about it, I'll try to de-shame it by saying, boy, I sure appreciate you hearing me out about that. We all need friends who can tell us things we're doing that maybe aren't the greatest, who can do it with respect and care. Makes me think of Proverbs 27 that says, wounds of a friend can be trusted, but an enemy multiplies kisses. So thanks for receiving this with a good heart. I do appreciate that. And so that's kind of feedback that we can give, validating, genuine compliments, and constructive critique that give people fuel to work with in their spiritual growth and development.
That's so good. Anybody have any questions for Mark on giving that kind of good, effective feedback? The compliment would be the easiest for me.
Yes.
Yeah. Constructive critique is difficult, but I love how he laid that out. It makes it seem doable to have the formula. And most of it's about me. You can even, this might just be me, but this is what I thought, this is how I felt.
Yes.
This is, and so.
Yeah. That's why I give you the little 5 points or 4 points or whatever, because in a stressful situation, we generally don't think clearly enough to figure out a good thing. But if we've been trained and we practice what we've trained, even under stress, I can fall back to what was my training? What did they tell me to do? 5 steps. What I observe, what I think, what I feel. How about you? Here's what I'm asking for. I can do that. So that comes back to us if we rehearse it, practice it enough. But just handling this stuff on the fly and trying to think, what should I do? It's under live action, emotion and stuff. I can't do it.
It's better to have some tools.
Yeah, exactly.
So what would you say about self-disclosure?
Self-disclosure, it's a little bit like questions in that it's something many beginning group leaders are inclined to do. The thinking generally is, I'm going to tell my story, and then my people will know that I understand them. And sometimes what's in their mind is, and the more of my story I tell, the more convinced they'll be that I understand them. I'm a person of the people. But it usually doesn't have that effect in folks. What I often will say to the people in the group is, well, I guess this person just needs an audience, and they're really more interested in talking about themselves than hearing from us, which is exactly the opposite of what you would shoot for. So the idea of communicating that you understand is a terrible reason to do a self-disclosure. If you wanted the people in your group to understand or to know that you understand them, what skill would you do? Reflective listening. It always comes back to that, doesn't it? Sounds like you feel this when that happened, and they can measure that and go, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. All right, you're keeping up with me. That helps them know that. Now, there are a couple of good reasons for doing a self-disclosure, and there's a right way and a wrong way to do that, so I'm going to go through that quickly. A couple of good reasons for doing a self-disclosure. One is it models vulnerability. Some people are guarded like all the time, and it's not without reason. You know, if their life experience was that they were picked on a lot, they were critiqued, anytime they were vulnerable, it was used against them. And so they can go around guarded. And you're thinking, well, that doesn't make the most out of small group. You got to be vulnerable. So if you go first, modeling vulnerability, thinking, so, well, the group leader's being vulnerable, maybe this is a place. And if other early adapters, they're also vulnerable. It starts it. And then even the person who starts out kind of guarded could say, well, this might be the exception to the rule. This might be the one place where I can be vulnerable. So it models it, and it says it'll be mutual here. It's not going to be one directional. I will be vulnerable with you, even as I ask you to be vulnerable to the group and to me. It normalizes experiences. Whatever kind of trap the devil gets you in, the forces of darkness kind of snare you in and mess you over with. The other thing they add on top of it is the lie that's, and you're the only one who's doing this poorly in this. Mm-hmm. You're the only one who's doing this badly. You, above all other, you are uniquely flawed, worse than all other human beings. So that's the lie on top of whatever the thing he's getting us trapped in. So you normalize the experience. You disclose something that's not completely flattering, a weakness, a failure on your part, and you just say it, and you say it without any impact on your shame or your identity. You're confident in your worth and value to the Lord, but you say, this is what I've experienced. And so they're thinking, so I'm not the only one? And then maybe another person who's also very brave will say, me too. And then someone else goes, me too. Mm-hmm. And they're thinking, me too. And they're going, hey, the devil lied to us. Yes, yes, he did. He lied to us. And so people start to figure that out, say, I'm not the only one doing this. And we figure out what Jesus said, that when he lies, he speaks his native language. He is a liar and the father of lies. And so this thing, I'm not the only one who's gone through this. It's not because I'm dumb or not spiritual enough. We're just because we're humans, and this is a thing that can trip us up. So it's valuable for that. And then because of those first two, modeling vulnerability and normalizing the human experience, it reduces fear of judgment. So, well, if the group leader's going to say that, I don't suppose the group leader's going to judge me if I share my thing as well. And so it encourages that. It attacks another lie. The other lie that the kingdom of darkness will tell us is, if anyone finds out who you really are on the inside, what you're really like, what you've done, they're going to lose all respect for you. They're going to either despise you or pity you. So you better not let them know. So that's what keeps us alone. So then once you as a group leader model this and you're vulnerable and they see that, and so then they figure out, well, when my group leader said that, I didn't despise or pity them. I admired them for their courage because I know how frightening that is to say that. And someone else in the group shares vulnerably, and you think, well, I didn't despise or pity them either. I just admired the strength they had. And you start to think, well, maybe people won't despise or pity me either. Maybe people appreciate how hard it is for me to say this. So it experientially gives people these lessons, and it counteracts some of the tricks that the devil's trying to play on people. Now, Self-disclosure can do those things: model vulnerability, normalize the experience, reduce fear of judgment if it's done well. And here's only 2 things. This is a list of 2 things. You might not even have to write these down. 2 things that make a self-disclosure work. 1, you have to share deeply enough that it's truly vulnerable. But you got to be concise enough that people don't get lost in your story and forget the work that they were doing, right?
Yeah.
So if I say, well, you know, I'm not a perfect Christian. Well, that's pretty vague. That's pretty safe. I'm not really risking anything. If I say, I have times when I doubt God, and I have times when I get angry at Him, and I scream and yell at God. Well, that's a little more specific, and it's not very flattering. So that's putting something real out there. Now, I don't have to share exactly what I screamed at God, and I don't have to tell what day of the week it was, what the weather was, what I was wearing. There's a lot of details I don't have to put into the story, but enough that I'm disclosing something, short enough that they can go, wow, well, our leader too, well, maybe I'll share. And that makes for a powerful self-disclosure. That'll make it work. I think that's everything I want to say about that. So truly vulnerable and concise enough that then they can get back to doing their work.
Good. Any questions for Mark on self-disclosure and when it might be appropriate in a small group setting?
I have an example of having done that before. I think I did it well, deep but not too much, concise.
Mhm.
And I've had the uber Christian in the room that wanted to correct me, tell me something from Scripture that, and then you've lost what you were trying to gain and for the rest of the group, Oh, we've got this person that's I've got the answer from Scripture, I've got this line to God, and I know what to tell you about that. Has that ever?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. And it's one thing if it's happening in a group where you're going to see these people regularly, you're going to build relationship, it's going to happen over time. It's different if it's like a devotional group or a class where people come, people go, you might not see them again, you may never see this person again. The other people in the room, this may be their only experience, and you got this super Christian telling the right answer. What I have done in the past, I use my reflective listening. So it sounds like when you hear my story, where your brain goes is you think about these scriptures. It sounds like that's helpful to you. Anyone else have a different reaction? And I'm just taking the ball from them. Thank you. And I'm saying, now, one, you could have a different reaction than that. That's not the one right answer. Anyone else want to share also? Did anyone else have a different response, different reaction to that? And so it kind of sets the stage. And most other people will go, that was sort of religious. and you may have a brave person go, yeah, I don't think that at all. I just, I feel bad like you feel bad. Yeah, sometimes we feel bad. And so I do the reflective listening, acknowledge it, but then I open it up broader to say, anyone else have a different experience? And it's the best I can do to kind of neutralize the toxin in that kind of religiosity and keep the environment where it's safe enough for people to still be genuine if they're ready to do that.
That's really good. I wanted to say, good for you.
That's what I'm saying in just nicer language, dressed up a little prettier, but kind of the same thing.
I have found in my experience, fortunately, that's more rare, fortunately, than people saying, gosh, you're leading this group, and if you feel that way sometimes, like that makes me feel okay, that you haven't arrived. You're still a work in progress, which is really what we want our group members to know about us. Like we're on the same journey as you are, and so thankfully that doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
It says that person is not ready to be vulnerable, even with an invitation, even with modeling, that they're not at that place yet.
All right, well, that wraps up our module on what did we start with? Self-disclosure. Self-disclosure. Where do we start?
Giving good feedback.
Giving good feedback. Woo,
Note-taker.
thank you. Yes, love the note taker. Okay, giving good feedback and self-disclosure. All right, thank you so much for participating.